It doesn't start with screaming. It starts in silence, a slow, creeping distortion, like smoke slipping under a door. One day, you're yourself, laughing, deciding, choosing. The next, you're watching yourself from behind a glass wall, wondering when you gave up the keys. Not everyone sees the cage. That's what makes it cruel. That's what makes it brilliant. You tell people, it's complicated, and you mean it. Because the bars aren't made of iron. They're built from shame, confusion, hope. You're stuck in a situation that looks from the outside entirely escapable. But escape is a fantasy when your mind has been reshaped from the inside out. They didn't chain your body. They rewired your instincts. And that's where the dark psychology begins. The toxic person, the one you just can't leave, doesn't trap you through logic. They trap you through erosion. They wear down the parts of you that recognize red flags. They dissolve your resistance, drip by drip, until nothing inside you screams, "Leave," anymore. It whispers, instead, rationalizes, apologizes, bargains. You see, the mind doesn't scream when it's gradually led astray. It acclimates, it adjusts, it adapts. Like a frog in boiling water, you stop noticing the temperature rising until it's too late. And here's the truly terrifying part. Sometimes you still know it's wrong. You know they lie. You know they twist your words, make you feel small, make you second-guess yourself. But knowing isn't power when you've been made to feel powerless. The toxic person counts on that. They need you to know it's wrong, but feel too paralyzed to act. That tension, that inner conflict, is what keeps you tethered. Because maybe if you were fully unaware, you'd walk away without hesitation. But if you're aware, yet too broken to run, that's the perfect prison. So how do they build this prison? Not all at once. They use a specific formula. Charm, confusion, contradiction. They start by becoming everything you ever wanted. The listener, the protector, the intense, magnetic presence that finally gets you. You feel seen, maybe for the first time. But that's the bait. That's the hook. What comes next is the twist. They start to reshape the story. Your story. They might ask subtle questions. Why do you always get anxious when I bring that up? Or, why do you care so much what other people think? They act like they're helping, but what they're really doing is laying the groundwork for doubt. About yourself, your memory, your gut, your worth. And when you finally push back, maybe with something small, maybe trembling, they say something like, "Wow, after everything I've done for you?" That line, that weaponized guilt, it sinks deeper than any insult ever could. Because now, you're not just defending yourself. You're trying to prove you're not ungrateful. You're trying to earn their approval back. And just like that, you've stopped trying to leave and started trying to please. This is how people stay trapped in relationships that drain them. Not because they don't know better, but because they've been conditioned not to trust their own eyes. The exit is visible, but it may as well be a mirage. And it gets worse. Because when someone manipulates you like this, and you don't leave, you begin to question your own character. Am I weak? Am I crazy? Do I deserve this? These thoughts don't free you. They tighten the grip. It's no longer just about them. Now, it's about the parts of you they've infected. And that's the sinister genius of toxic control. You stay, not out of love, but because leaving would mean confronting how much of yourself you've lost. You stay because even if you hate how they treat you, you fear who you'll be without them more. You're not chained to them. You're chained to the version of you they created. The one who doubts, the one who stays. The one who's been taught that the pain is deserved. That's the invisible cage. And once it's built, the door can be wide open. But it won't matter if you've forgotten how to walk. Because sometimes the scariest prison is the one you don't even try to escape. They don't always come wearing red flags. Sometimes they come with understanding, with attentiveness, with the uncanny ability to finish your sentences, to echo your pain before you've even voiced it. You think, finally, someone who sees me. And that's where the mirror trick begins, because the most dangerous manipulator isn't the one who dominates you outright. It's the one who mirrors you, your fears, your flaws, your private wounds, and then uses them as keys to your mind. They listen deeply, or at least it feels that way. In reality, they're collecting data, observing the cracks in your confidence, the lingering guilt from past failures, the fears you think you hide. And when the moment is right, they reflect them back at you, not to heal you, but to own you. It doesn't feel like manipulation at first. It feels like intimacy. They might say, "I know you always blame yourself. It's kind of heartbreaking." Or, "You push people away before they can leave you, don't you?" They say it gently, as if they care. And in that moment, something inside you unfolds. You feel exposed, but also safe. You think, maybe they're the only one who truly understands, but what they've really done is expose the blueprint of your soul. And now they can shape it. This is the mirror trick. They don't attack your strengths. They align with your weaknesses. They become the voice that echoes your internal dialogue, but louder, more confident, more certain than you've ever been. You stop trusting your own reflection and start trusting theirs. And if you've ever doubted your worth, they will confirm it, not to heal it, but to cement it. They might say, "You always think you're the problem." And at first, that feels validating. But later, when you are upset, they'll say, "There you go again, always overreacting." Suddenly, what felt like insight now feels like a weapon turned against you. And you wonder, was I always like this? This is the psychological sleight of hand. They don't force you to believe them. They help you doubt yourself. And self-doubt is far more effective than control. Because when you doubt your perception, your feelings, your memories, you need someone to anchor you. Guess who offers to be that anchor? The same person who cut your tether. And what's worse, the mirror doesn't always reflect just your pain. It reflects your hope. If deep down you believe you're unlovable, and they say, "No one has ever loved you like I do," it feels like redemption, not a compliment, a cure. You cling to that, because it feels like they're the only one who sees past your brokenness. You don't realize, they see it because they highlighted it, amplified it. They've curated this reflection of you, half angel, half damage, and convinced you it's the real thing. And if you ever try to pull away, the mirror shatters. Suddenly, they flip. "You're so selfish. I thought you were stronger than this. No one else will ever put up with you." Now they don't just reflect your insecurities, they weaponize them. You begin to panic, not because they hurt you, but because without their distorted mirror, you no longer know what you look like. This is where the identity confusion deepens, and where staying becomes easier than leaving. Because leaving would mean confronting the truth. You were never fully seen. You were studied, mapped, reflected back in ways that felt like love, but were actually control. And part of you still craves that reflection. Because if they don't see you, then maybe no one ever did. That thought alone is unbearable. So instead, you tolerate the manipulation. You explain it away. You say, "They just understand me on a level no one else does." But they don't. They understand your wounds, and they've built a throne inside them. You start to second-guess things you used to feel solid about. Your sense of humor, your intelligence, your past relationships, your future dreams. All of it now runs through their filter. You don't know what's yours anymore. You only know what they reflect back at you. And yet, you stay. Because to walk away from them would mean walking away from the version of you they constructed. And that version, however broken, still feels like home. But the mirror isn't real. And deep down, some part of you knows it. It's why you can't sleep at night, why your thoughts loop, why you stare at yourself in the dark, trying to remember who you were before them. Because the scariest thing isn't that they reflected your pain, it's that you accepted it as the truth. It's the unpredictability that hooks you, not the cruelty, not the chaos, but the strange, intoxicating hope that maybe this time they'll be different. You tell yourself that people have bad days, that maybe you are overreacting, that you just need to get through the rough patches and the good times will come back. And when they do come back, even for a moment, they feel like rain after a long drought. That's not a coincidence. It's a pattern, and it's been engineered. Intermittent reinforcement is one of the darkest psychological tools in the manipulator's arsenal. It's the exact principle casinos use to keep people glued to slot machines, not because they win often, but because they win just enough to stay addicted. Toxic people do the same. But instead of money, they gamble with your mind. They wound you. And then they become your healer. They create the storm, and then hand you the umbrella. Not all the time, just enough. That unpredictability creates tension in your nervous system, a high-stakes game where your next move might win you affection or punishment. And because you don't know which you'll get, your brain clings tighter, desperate for resolution, desperate for relief. It looks like this. One night they scream at you, humiliate you, disappear. You cry yourself to sleep wondering what you did wrong. Then, silence. And just when you start to pull away emotionally, a text arrives. I miss you. I'm sorry. I love you. Your stomach twists. You feel seen again. Not because they apologized, but because the pattern has returned. And this, right here, is the hook. Your body starts associating their affection not with love, but with survival. Like a person crawling through a desert, you stop questioning the water's purity. You just drink. This cycle teaches your nervous system something primal. Pain is followed by reward, and reward is earned through endurance. So you endure. You start to believe that the more you tolerate, the more they'll love you, that if you can just be patient, just be understanding, just be better, they'll stop hurting you. But they don't stop. They reset, then repeat. And every reset reattaches you more deeply. This is addiction. Not metaphorically, but biologically. Your brain releases dopamine not just during the highs, but because of the uncertainty. That roller coaster of dread, relief, dread, relief. It's the exact rhythm that makes slot machines irresistible. And just like gamblers chase a jackpot that rarely comes, you chase the version of them that only appears when you're on the brink of breaking. And here's the most twisted part. The worse they treat you, the more powerful their affection feels afterward. Because now it's not just kindness, it's rescue. So when they finally hold you again, whisper apologies, stroke your hair, look you in the eyes and say, I was just scared of losing you, your entire body exhales. And you confuse that relief with love. It isn't love. It's release from captivity, but that release feels so good it becomes your goal. Not happiness, not stability, just that next moment of calm. And you'll do anything to reach it again, even if it means suffering in between. You stop noticing how long the in-between stretches. The fights get worse. The apologies get weaker. But your craving grows. Because you're not chasing the person anymore. You're chasing the pattern. And patterns are powerful, especially when they tap into your deepest needs. The need for closure, the need for reassurance, the need to believe that someone who knows you so well can't possibly be evil. But that's the trick. They don't have to be evil. They just have to keep switching. Warm, then cold. Sweet, then silent. Safe, then savage. Until your nervous system can no longer tell the difference between love and captivity. And by the time you do realize, you're already deep inside the loop. You might even start defending the cycle. You'll say things like, but they can be amazing. They're not always like that. They're just going through something. You're not wrong. They can be amazing. That's the point. If they were cruel all the time, you'd leave. But they're just kind enough to keep you hoping. Just rare enough with their tenderness that every drop feels sacred. And soon, the cycle becomes your new normal. Fights no longer shock you. Apologies no longer surprise you. You start to expect the pattern. And once you expect it, you unconsciously protect it. You adjust your behavior to avoid setting them off. You shrink. You apologize first. You preemptively soothe. You become so hyper-aware of their moods that you forget to feel your own. This isn't love. This is survival in disguise. And like all addictions, it comes with withdrawal. The thought of leaving makes your stomach lurch. Because deep down, you know the pain of absence will feel worse than the pain of staying. At least when you stay, you get occasional relief. But if you leave, you get nothing. Just silence. Just emptiness. Just the long, unbearable wait for a text that may never come. That's the cruelty of intermittent reinforcement. It doesn't just condition your behavior. It hijacks your entire sense of reality. And the longer you stay trapped in the cycle, the more you forget. That love shouldn't feel like gambling with your sanity. There comes a point in every toxic relationship where the chains don't look like chains anymore. They look like routines, compromises, choices you think you're making. But they're not choices. Not really. They're symptoms of something deeper, something darker. A psychological collapse that doesn't scream or fight or beg to be freed. It just quietly gives up. This is learned helplessness. And it doesn't begin with apathy. It begins with hope. Hope that you can fix things. That if you say the right words, avoid the wrong triggers, prove your worth, again and again and again, they'll finally see you. Choose you, treat you right. But it never works. Not for long. You fight, you cry, you explain, you try again. And every time, nothing changes. Or worse, things do change, but only long enough to make you think the nightmare's over. You let your guard down, only to be hurt all over again. The cycle spins, and your efforts start to feel pointless. So eventually you stop trying. Not because you can't leave, but because you've been psychologically conditioned to believe it won't matter. That escape is either impossible, or worse, meaningless. Learned helplessness was first discovered in lab experiments. Dogs were placed in cages with electrified floors. At first, they tried to escape. They barked, panicked, leapt. But when no escape came, something broke in them. Even when the doors were later left open, they stayed. Trembling, silent, conditioned. The door was open, but the mind was closed. Now think about your own cage. It's not made of steel, it's made of stories. Stories like, they're just like this when they're stressed. I'm too sensitive. No one else would put up with me anyway. Maybe this is the best I'll get. These aren't thoughts. They're scripts, and you didn't write them alone. Toxic people are masterful storytellers, but their favorite genre is rewriting your narrative. They chip away at your autonomy until you no longer recognize the shape of your own voice, until every decision feels like a gamble, until the idea of leaving feels more dangerous than staying. You start to believe you're the unstable one, the needy one, the broken one, so you stay. Because leaving isn't just about walking out the door, it's about facing the terrifying question, what if they were right about me? And that fear is paralyzing. It's not just emotional abuse. It's psychological erosion. Slow, invisible damage that turns your once sharp instincts into static. That makes you doubt your anger, your intuition, your memories. You remember the times you tried to speak up, and they flipped it back on you. You're crazy. You twist everything. No wonder people leave you. You remember how every confrontation ended with you apologizing. You remember how they cried and said they were scared to lose you. How they said you're the only one who truly understands them. How they made you feel special, even in the midst of the damage. And that's the cruelest twist of all. You were trained to believe your suffering was a sign of love. So now, when the pain returns, you interpret it as proof. Proof that you care deeply, proof that you're loyal, proof that you're strong enough to withstand it. But what if it's not strength? What if it's just conditioning? You don't flinch anymore when they raise their voice. You don't cry anymore when they leave for hours. You don't hope anymore that they'll change. You just endure, and that numbness is the final stage. The part where your body is still present, but your mind is somewhere far away, disengaged, faded, a ghost haunting your own life. Because when you've been denied escape enough times, emotionally, mentally, sometimes even physically, your brain stops searching for exits. It begins to normalize captivity. It tells you this is just life, just relationships, just how it is. And that belief becomes your prison. You might even look at other people in healthy relationships and feel something worse than envy. Disbelief. You can't fathom love without punishment, affection without withdrawal, safety without vigilance. So you lower your expectations, you teach yourself not to ask for too much, not to dream too big, not to trust too deeply. You shrink. You become small enough to fit inside the shrinking space they've given you, and one day, you forget you were ever bigger than this. That's what learned helplessness does. It rewires the boundaries of your reality. It takes a person who once believed in their own worth and turns them into someone who survives by doubting it. And the most haunting part? No one sees it happening because the collapse is silent, invisible, internal. You still show up to work. You still laugh with friends. You still post smiling photos. But inside, you've already surrendered. And unless something breaks the pattern, some flicker of clarity, of rage, of unbearable stillness, you'll stay. Not because you love them, not even because you fear them, but because they've taught you that trying to leave is a waste of time. At first, you still remembered. You remembered what your laughter sounded like when it wasn't cautious. You remembered how you used to speak without editing every word. You remembered the dreams you had before your days became filled with decoding their moods, their silences, their storms. But over time, those memories faded. Not all at once, just piece by piece, like fog slowly crawling over a landscape you once knew by heart, until the contours of your identity are blurred beyond recognition. This is what they never tell you about toxic relationships. It's not just your peace that gets stolen. It's you. Your voice, your values, your internal compass. It begins with little compromises. You stop seeing certain friends, not because they asked you to, but because it always causes a fight. You wear what they prefer, laugh a little quieter, swallow opinions you used to shout from rooftops. You start censoring yourself, not out of fear, but out of habit. And then one day you look in the mirror and realize you don't recognize the person staring back. Not because your face has changed, but because your eyes have. They're hollow in a way you can't explain, tired in a way sleep can't fix, haunted by a question you're too afraid to ask. Who am I without them? Because somewhere along the line, they became your reference point, your emotional compass, your judge and jury. Everything you do is filtered through their reaction. Every part of yourself that didn't earn their approval withers. And now, you're not sure what's left. This is identity erosion, a slow, psychological disintegration that occurs when another person becomes the architect of your reality, when love becomes surveillance, when connection becomes control. They didn't just want your loyalty. They wanted authorship, to rewrite your story, to install their voice in your head so deeply that even in their absence, you still hear it. You still ask yourself what they would think, how they would react, whether they'd approve. And in the echo chamber of that voice, yours becomes harder to find. You stop trusting your own instincts. You second-guess your reactions. You gaslight yourself so thoroughly that even your pain feels illegitimate. You convince yourself that maybe you're just too sensitive, too needy, too much. And that's the final trap. You no longer need them to manipulate you. You do it to yourself. You become your own captor. You walk through life in shoes that don't fit because once upon a time they said they liked the way you walked in them. You suppress joy because it might be too much. You kill your curiosity because it once sparked jealousy. You filter your emotions because they made you feel crazy. And yet, through all of this, you still miss them. Not because they were good to you, but because they're the only map you've had for so long. Because even pain, when familiar, feels safer than the unknown. Because at least in the chaos, you knew who you were supposed to be, the caretaker, the fixer, the forgiver. But without them, you're not sure. And that's what makes leaving so terrifying. Not the loneliness, not even the grief, but the silence that follows. The silence where their voice used to live. The space where your identity used to be. It's in that silence that the real work begins. The rebuilding, the remembering, the reckoning. Because the truth is, you were someone before them. Someone vibrant, flawed, curious, free. You had quirks they made fun of, but you loved them. You had dreams they mocked, but they lit you up. You had a self that didn't need their permission to exist. That self didn't disappear. It was buried. And now, piece by piece, it calls to be reclaimed. Not in grand gestures, but in small rebellions. Listening to the music they hated. Wearing colors they said didn't suit you. Speaking without apology. Laughing too loud. Saying no. These are the rituals of resurrection, but it's not quick, and it's not easy. Because the voice you'll hear the loudest in the beginning is still theirs. You're nothing without me. But listen closer. Beneath that voice is another one. Yours. Soft at first, but growing. And it will say, I was never nothing. You just made me forget. Let that be the beginning. The quiet start of something real, not a return to who you were. But the birth of who you always were meant to become. Because the darkest thing a toxic person ever steals isn't your time, or your love, or even your freedom. It's your reflection. And now, it's time to look again. Slowly, softly, steadily, until you see yourself. Really see. And this time, don't look away. Now the storm has passed, and only stillness remains. No more raised voices, no more spinning thoughts, just the echo of something quieter, something older, pulling at the edges of your memory. It's strange, isn't it? How silence can be both terrifying and sacred. How absence, once feared, can become space for something new, or something ancient, returning. The truth is, leaving a toxic person isn't just an act of escape. It's an unburying, a slow, sacred recovery of the self you once left behind, just to survive. And healing doesn't come in thunderclaps. It arrives in whispers. In that moment, you finally sleep through the night. In that day, you don't check your phone for their name. In that flash of laughter that feels completely, entirely yours. You begin to take up space again. Not the kind they allowed you to have, but the kind you claim without permission. You begin to trust your voice again, to hear your own thoughts unfiltered, to look in the mirror and not flinch. You are not broken, you are rebuilding. And though the memory of them may still echo through your mind like a ghost in a locked room, it gets quieter, fainter, less real. Until one day you realize they were never the key. You always had it, hidden deep beneath the fear, waiting, patient, beneath the ruins. And now, you've found it. Turn it gently and step back into the world.